or our succession plan for your business?
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
Hello and thanks for joining Corporate Governance Platform. The program is proudly brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals. And we are broadcasting live from MITV Lagos. I'm Dr. Tunde Odeyemi. And this evening we'll be having conversation on the roles of executive directors as managers of corporate business. And to lead in the conversation is a very distinguished Fellow of ICSAN, Mrs. LYNDA ONEFELI, FCIS. Mrs. LYNDA ONEFELI is a lawyer, a chartered secretary, and administrator. She is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, and currently a member of the Governing Council of the Institute. She holds a master's degree in law from the University of Lagos. Mrs. ONEFELI is the current chairman of the Association of Professional Bodies in Nigeria, the Lagos State Chapter. And she's currently the principal of Veritas Solicitors, a firm of legal practitioners and chartered secretaries. And a notary public, she is also the chairman of the Publicity and Advocacy Committee of ICSAN. Mrs. LYNDA ONEFELI started her career with the maritime law firm of Kola Olapoju and Associates, and subsequently moved on to the City Entertainment as legal, administrative and human resources manager, and thereafter to Bond Solicitors as a senior associate. She has attended several local and international courses both on law and corporate governance, and of course on administration. Mrs. LYNDA ONEFELI, it's nice to have you on Corporate Governance Platform.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. I'm quite happy to be here today again.
We're happy to be here. Thank you. Just of recent, we had a conversation on the roles of non-executive directors. Now we are discussing the role of executive directors as managers of corporate business. And I think at this time I want to give opportunity to our viewers to be part of the program. You can't be part of the program by asking questions or making comments via text message only. Please, no phone calls is allowed on this program. You can ask questions or make comments on the conversation, and we are going to be discussing the roles of executive directors as managers of corporate business. Let me start this conversation by asking, who are the executive directors of organization?
Thank you. Executive directors are those directors, members of the board of directors who are paid staff of an organization. I mean, they are full-time members of staff of the organization. They participate, they receive either salaries, commissions, share on profit, they take benefits like a pension scheme, retirement benefits. They are full-time staff who are expected to apply their time fully and wholly to the business of the organization. If Principle 5 of the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018 provides that the executive directors are to support the managing director in carrying out the objectives and the operations of the company. So as such, the executive directors are fully, and they are required to give all of their time to the business of the company.
So what distinguishes the executive directors from the non-executive directors?
Okay, so the executive directors are just like the opposite of the non-executive directors, executive and non. which is just logical. But when you go into it, the executive directors, the difference between the executive directors and the non-executive directors is that whereas the executive directors are expected to give all of their time, the non-executive directors are not expected to give all of their time to the business of the organization. They are required to attend to periodic board meetings or committee meetings where they are part of. They are not paid salaried staff of the organization. They are not full-time staff. And unlike the non-executive directors, the executive directors, I had said earlier, they receive remuneration, they participate in profit sharing, whereas the non-executive directors do not.
Okay, still looking at the distinguishing factors between the executive and the non-executive directors. The executive directors, according to the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018, requires them to have a broad understanding of the business of the organization, in addition to have specific qualification that will assist them to carry out their assignments. Why do you think the code specifically made this provision for executive directors?
I think that because the executive directors, they are very crucial, but these are permanent, like when we're distinguishing, I said the non-executives do not have to put in all of their time, but the executive directors, they play a very pivotal role. They are to assist, as the code has provided, assist the managing director who is charged with the daily operations of the company in carrying out the objectives of the company. So you find out that it is key that they have a broad knowledge, because with the knowledge of the affair running the general affairs of the company that they have, aside from the specifics that will be assigned to them, in their specific roles, they need to have these knowledge that can help them to fulfill that assignment that has been given to them, and to fulfill the role, which is to assist in achieving the objectives of the company.
Okay, the code also made provisions that if you are an executive director in a company, you can be a non-executive director in another organization. Why do you think the code made this provision?
Okay. There's also a rider to that provision, and that is as long as it does not interfere with their role in the company where they are executive directors. Okay. So that is a very important part of it. So because one may be thinking, if without the rider, it means it's like having two jobs. But we know that it's not like having two jobs, because one, as a non-executive director, you don't have to pay all of your time full time, so they can have some time to pay to the other company. But more importantly, I would think that it gives them the opportunity to be exposed to some other companies, some other organizations, and this experience and knowledge they might garner on these boards, they can also put it to good use in the boards where they are executive directors.
Okay.
As long as it does not interfere with their roles.
Or probably detrimental to their roles as the executive directors.
Yes. But because of course reasonably they cannot go and become to their competitors, become non-executive directors
in the same
to their competitors. I mean, that would not.
Okay, I think that is understandable. Now, why do you also think talking about the code again, the code also says that the executive directors should not be a member of some certain committees. For instance, remuneration committee, audit committee, nomination committee, governance committees of the board. Why do you think the code restricts the executive directors from being a member of such committees?
These are strategic committees of a company that are pivotal to taking certain important decisions and assessments. And where you have these directors in these committees, there most probably will be an issue of conflict, because you find out that the governance committee, for instance, conducts evaluation of their members, because these executive directors, they are staff of their senior management, they are staff of the organization, and they're having staff evaluation or something, and they're sitting on the committee where they're being evaluated. You have the remuneration committee, for instance, where they are charged with some part of their duties is to assess remuneration bonuses and all that, and these people are sitting on those committees where they are recommending to the board that they should be giving bonuses
what should be paid to them.
And that also would bring up issues of conflict would arise. So I would think that should be the reason.
It's what we call, you can't be a judge in your own court.
Perfect.
Okay. If you are just joining us, is Corporate Governance Platform, and we are discussing the roles of executive directors as managers of corporate business. And we have in the studio Mrs. LYNDA ONEFELI, FCIS, doing justice to that particular topic. If you want to be part of the program, you can ask questions or make comments. Send your question or comments to 080-2323-1287. I take the number again. Your comments to 080-2323-1287. You have the number on the screen of your television set. Okay, in corporate governance, I think I understand, and I'm very sure our viewers understand the distinguishing factors that you have brought up between the executive and the non-executive directors, and why the executive director should not be part of some committees. Now, why do you now think in corporate governance it's not desirable for a managing director who is an executive director to also become the chairman of the organization?
Okay, so yeah, according to good corporate governance practices, and even the code specifically talks about the separation of those offices. If you look in practical terms, if you look at the role of the chairman is saddled with directing the board in a manner that it will achieve the objectives, the strategic objectives of the company, and also to guide the managing director. While the managing director is to see to the operations, daily operations, the chairman is not to be involved in the daily operations of the company, while the managing director is to be should be, that's his role. And then find out that when you merge both roles, you have somebody, you can even see a conflict from the roles. You find out one man, you shouldn't be involved in the daily running of the organization. In the same man, you should be the one running it. Already, clearly, logically, you can see that there's a conflict. But also, you find out that when you have these roles merged, you have somebody that has all the power. There's no check, there's no balance. There are no checks, there are no balances. You just have somebody who is taking, now, who then guides the managing director? When the managing director is the manager and the chairman. That makes a lot of provisions for the role of the chairman, then becomes redundant.
But the shareholders are still there.
Yeah, but it's not their role to guide. Okay. The shareholders can only come together, they come together at general meetings. Meanwhile, the code says that every quarter there must be, these companies must have board meetings where they can discuss these things, and the chairman would have seen reports and can guide. It specifically says the chairman should guide the managing director in issues that concern the company. So if you have these two people, then you have somebody who has all the power. He just sits down, takes decisions. There's no check, there's nobody to guide, there's nobody to go to guide. He's the know-all, he's the do-all, and that can never go well.
Okay, the individual occupying the two positions may be too powerful because nobody puts you in check. Yes. Okay, when discussing non-executive directors, we normally refers to the concept of independence. Yes. That is, non-executive directors should be independent. Now, can an executive director be independent? What are we even talking about when we talk about the notion of independence in relation to the duties or to the jobs of directors?
Because I'll start by answering that question. An executive director, in my opinion, cannot be fully independent. Okay. Generally, every director, be you executive or otherwise, should be independent to an extent, in a manner of conduct, and should be seen as being independent. However, when we continue in this discussion and we see what qualifies, what the code, the points that brought out for independence, to determine the independence of a director, you find out that it's going to be a bit tough for an executive director to be independent. So that's why they have the executive directors, they have the non-executive director, and they have the independent non-executive directors. So you have some non-executive directors that are not termed as independent. So we call the independent ones INED. So what makes a director independent non-executive? It means, one, that person must not have more than 0.01% of the shared capital, paid up capital of that organization. That's one. That person must not have any business dealings, must not have had any business dealings where he can make money or otherwise with the company in the past 5 years. That person must not be a relative of someone who is currently a director, who has close dealings with the company, and you find out that it's difficult for you to the executive director is earning salary. That's already a time where he's making money from the company, though he's rendering his services. So and then also one of the other provisions that you cannot migrate from being a non-executive director to an INED on the same board. The Act prohibits that. So it's the concept of independence, though general, but then for you to be classified as an independent non-executive director, you must meet these criteria that have been set out.
Okay, I have a question from one certain Deji Olufola. He's asking, how many directors should be on the board of an organization, and what determines the number of executive directors that should be there and the non-executive directors that should be there?
Okay, so
it's a message from one of our viewers. Okay,
the code is very clear on that now. The code does not provide for any number. It says that the company would assess its needs and put in and determine the composition of its board, bearing in mind the issue of quorum, the issue of diversity, also bearing in mind its needs, as in for it to have enough people who would be in its board committees, where you have that in the board committee, the minimum number for each committee is 3. So the board has to consider that, and then consider its operations, consider its needs, and then determine the number. But the board also has to then defer to its sectoral regulations. Okay. So where you have, since the code does not mandate any particular number, but if your sector says you must have 5, minimum of 5, then you don't have a choice. You have to definitely, you have to follow both. So that is.
Okay, that's what determines it actually.
Yes.
But from what you said, I want to pick a question out. Can a member of the board, either executive director or non-executive director, be a member of 2 or more committees?
Executive directors, a member of, yes.
You can be a member of 2 committees?
Course, yes.
Okay. You are not restricted to just work on a particular committee. No. Okay. Now, why is it that the code specifies that executive directors must declare conflict of interest in the organization, and thereafter, on an annual basis, continue to still declare conflict of interest?
Yeah, because the board has the duty to actually assess the conflict of interest situation on its board, of its board members. So because it's also, like I like to say, it's very apparent why it is important, because when you have conflict of interest issues, then you begin to have trust issues, trust issues. But where that member of the board has declared to the board that this is where I have a conflict. For instance, you have a board member who owns a property, and the company is using that property and paying him rent. I mean, it's a conflict of interest, clearly. And he's declared that, look, I own this property, and the company and the board is willing to go ahead, then it's okay. But what the code then says is, it doesn't say there must not be a conflict of interest issues. It says that you must declare it. and continue to assess it and continue to declare it so that it is clear. Of course, for every reasonable board, where the conflict becomes unmanageable, then they should actually do something about it. But basically, it's for the sake of transparency.
Okay. So there's nothing actually wrong in the example that you gave, but it has to be declared.
It has to
Okay.
be declared.
Docs, ICSAN professional training prepares one to become an executive director.
Oh yes, ICSAN, I think more than any other thing, I would make bold to say that the training we have in ICSAN prepares you to be an executive director, an excellent executive director. I don't think that training, you can get a better one.
You cannot get it better than what ICSAN does. Okay, now, still talking about ICSAN training, does ICSAN have any form of training whereby you are already an executive director, you want to develop your capacity, that you want to be a better executive director? Does ICSAN have such platform to make them be a better executive directors and probably non-executive director this time around?
Yes, definitely. ICSAN has a training unit that does year-round trainings, and we have continued professional development trainings going on all year round. So it's best to identify the needs, and then go for which area you want to be, trained in. But I can say that in all areas of to qualify to be a director, an effective director, ICSAN has this training at any time of the year. It goes on year round.
So if you want to be a better executive director, ICSAN is there for you. When we were discussing the other time the roles of non-executive directors, it was mentioned that the non-executive directors or members of the board, they have huge responsibility for the organization. And if there is any problem that probably will lead to litigation, that the non-executive directors will be responsible. Does the same thing goes for the executive directors?
Yes, because in this case of executive directors, they even have more liability in that they have two liabilities. The non-executive directors, there's a parallel duty that they have, legal duty, as members of senior management and as directors. So they're playing two roles, unlike the non-executive who are playing just the role. So as a director, they are equally liable.
They are very liable.
Very much.
Non-executive directors are also very liable.
Yes, they are.
Wonderful. Now, what is your advice for executive directors out there on how to, it's the beginning of a year, how to be a better executive director?
Yeah, there's nothing more rewarding than seeing that you're in a place where you're contributing and you're making progress and your mark is being felt. So I'm going to say that as an executive director, as a director generally, you need to take programs, take courses that would make you a better and more effective director. And ICSAN is where to be. I'll ask you to call ICSAN and make your inquiries. Also, ICSAN does implants. They could come to your company for all your directors, all your non-executive directors, or all your executive directors as the need may be. But I think that the solution to any challenge that you have regarding directorship, the board, composition, whatever it is, you just pick your phone and call ICSAN.
Okay, before I wrap up, I need to say this because a lot of people out there are also aspiring to be an executive director in one company, also be a non-executive director in other companies. Are there limitations to the number of companies where you can be a non-executive director? I know it is allowed as long as it's not detrimental to your discharging of duties. Are there other limitations to the number of companies where you can be a non-executive director?
The code is silent on that, but what it will judge, I think, will be that the rider, as long as it's not detrimental. I mean, if you're going to be an executive director in a company, and then you're a non-executive director in 20 companies, I don't see how you're going to it will be detrimental because you need to pay attention to.
Well, 20 may be detrimental. What of 5?
Well, I wouldn't know. That's why, it's based on your company. Because for every company that you are a non-executive director to, you must disclose to your company where you work. So they will then, I think, determine whether or not. So the code does not say that there is a particular
There is a particular number.
Yeah.
You know the managing director is an executive director.
Yes, he is.
So can the managing director of a company, who is an executive director in that company, also become a non-executive director in another company,
Yes.
as long as it's not detrimental?
As long as it's not detrimental.
Now, can he also rise to become a chairman of the other company?
Chairman of a company is non-executive.
It can become a
Yes,
chairman of the company.
he can.
So, in one sense, he's an MD in a company and is a chairman in another company.
Definitely.
So the role still fused, managing director, chairman,
Yes.
but
So
in different
and
organizations.
they are in different roles.
Organizations.
Are playing different roles.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming on the show. I think we have had a fruitful discussion on the roles of executive directors as managers of corporate business. Mrs. LYNDA ONEFELI, FCIS, the chairman of Publicity and Advocacy Committee of ICSAN. We want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's been my pleasure.
And for our viewers, we are saying a very big thank you for being part of the show. On behalf of my producer, Adegboye Galabiran, the technical director, David Adepoju, and the camera crew, I want to ask you to join us same time, same station next week. I remain your regular host, Dr. Tunde Odeyemi. Bye for now.
Do you have continuity or association plan for your business?
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.